and I'm here with my dear friend and fellow astrologer, Christina Rodenbeck from oxfordastrologer.com.
Hi.
Hello. Hi, Christina. And we're here to talk to you about the next month's astrology, which is Scorpio season. Very pleased about that, being a Scorpio. Very exciting. But also to talk about what's been and gone, what's going on, and just bring astrology to life for you.
Yes.
How are you, Christina?
I'm very well, I think. I'm enjoying the changing season, of course. I love this time of year. The leaves are sere, the berries are red, you know, the apples are dropping from the trees. We're heading into winter. I think it's very exciting.
Yeah.
I'm also watching the news.
Yeah, the nature and the world, the world of nature is exciting. I went for a sea swim actually recently. It's obviously getting much colder now, but the beauty of that, you know, there was a sunset as well and the light on the water. I mean, that natural beauty is just so fantastic. And again, I love this time of year. It's a really, there's so much kind of subtle color, isn't there? And subtle light.
Light is fantastic. It has been amazing, the slanting light here. And of course, it's a great time here for sunsets in this country.
Yeah, it is. It is. And sunrises, if you want to get up.
And sunrises, both good. And we've had this incredible autumn, which has been quite warm, really, up until now. I've got like 15,000 layers of clothing on today. But it's been this beautiful, warm autumn. And feel, you know, you really feel the seasons turn. It's lovely.
It is
so let's talk.
Go on.
I was just going to say, let's talk Scorpio season. Scorpio season's coming. You are the expert on Scorpio as a Scorpio. What's your take? And Scorpio season this year has Scorpio eclipses in it. So it's a very special one.
Yeah, we're diving in deep, aren't we? You know, Scorpio goes in deep. It's intense. It's pain and pleasure, I would say. I mean, that's, you know, Scorpio season. It's not hovering about on the surface. Scorpio doesn't do superficial, doesn't hover about on the surface, dives in and kind of excavates. I mean, often with Scorpio, I think that Taurus Scorpio axis is so powerful, you know, fertility, growth, regeneration, transformation. It's kind of things don't stay the same. There's this real sense of the cycle of life, of birth, death, rebirth, renewal. I mean, that's we see it in nature, but I think it's an integral part of Scorpio season in different ways as well.
I mean, I think I agree with you about that being a particularly powerful axis. It's a fixed axis. Let me just turn that off right now. Sorry, I beg your pardon. You know, it's the fixed axis. One of the fixed axis. The other one, of course, is Aquarius and Leo. And it's also the axis of full spring on one side and full autumn on the other. And as you say, regeneration and, well, generation, it's generative, isn't it? I mean, Taurus rules the throat and actually eating in a way, you know, that devouring. And Scorpio rules the how can I put
elimination. I'll give you that. If you want to say it nicely, elimination.
Basically, so we're talking about food and shit, really.
Yeah, okay.
with that axis, you know, and that what's more important than that, but also Scorpio rules the sex, the genitalia, right? So it's also about generation in that sense too. It's a really powerful axis. It's our kind of animal side in a way.
No, I think it is. I think it is. You know, and the other thing for me that's key with Scorpio season is the link with the dark.
Yeah.
You know, the northern hemisphere, we're The clocks always change during this time of year. And you know, we are the nighttime, we're spending more time in the night. But Scorpio is also, you know, this so often we get scared of the dark. You know, the light is all clarity and consciousness, and the dark is kind of more witchy and the unconscious. But I think one of the attributes of Scorpio season is it helps us to learn that the dark is actually a place you can be, and you can be safe within it. And it's important to go to the dark to kind of learn and grow and transform. You can't just stay in the light. You know, you need to go into the dark areas, actually.
And it's no coincidence that Halloween is in the middle of this season. You know, our festival of witchiness, darkness, and the 5th of November in this country, you know, where you have, it's a celebration of the darkness. And what can you do in the dark? But you can spark light. You see the light better in the dark. So there's no point having, say, fireworks in the middle of the day. You need the darkness in order to see the fireworks.
Yeah, yeah. And it's that theme of finding those. I mean, I often think with Pluto, which is one of the rulers of Scorpio, you know, Pluto, god of the underworld. But if you're willing to go down to the underworld, there's those hidden riches. And you can emerge back with them. So I agree. Also, Day of the Dead is this time of year. And the other one is Diwali, Festival of the Light. So you really get these contrasts, don't you, of the dark and the light during Scorpio season, a reminder that both are equally powerful, actually.
And this is also the gateway. I mean, the Scorpio season is the gateway into winter. And I like to think of Scorpio as like that. And it's the entry into these winter months, it's the entry into the dark. So it's not like this isn't the darkest point of the year. That's not here yet.
Yeah,
it's a celebration. It's like we're going through into those caves.
Yeah.
Did you read that children's book, The Princess and the Goblin, when you were a child?
No, I don't think so.
It's the first sort of real fantasy novel written in the 1850s, and it's a wonderful celebration of that underground place full of jewels and fire.
Interesting. Actually, talking about books, I realized that my friend Joanna Waters, another astrologer, has just sent me this book actually for my birthday. It's arrived early, and it's called The Devil You Know. And it's written by a forensic psychiatrist, a woman who worked with patients in Broadmoor, you know, one of the mental institutes in this country. And it's looking at these people who've committed awful crimes and murders. And it's her conversation with them and finding compassion, empathy, and understanding within that to a certain extent. And I did, you know, I was reading it last night, knowing we were talking today about Scorpio season. I thought, I'm already going in. You know? It's classic Scorpio stuff. So
yeah, you go there, Sally. I'm going to let you go to Broadmoor and report back. That's the kind of thing I do avoid. I am afraid of that kind of darkness. I don't like it. But another sort of form of that going into the dark is psychological, is depth psychology, and investigating your interior life, investigating your dreams, etc. These are all things that are powerful to do in this season. And Scorpio is ruled by Pluto and Mars, which is interesting this year because Mars is going retrograde, isn't it? Shall we dive into the month ahead then? Are we ready?
No, before we do, or we can, but I do want to talk about one person Ivan Chouinard, as a Scorpio. We could talk about him during the eclipses though, couldn't we? The founder of Patagonia.
Oh, you love him. Yes, we love him. He's a great guy.
He's a great guy, but we can talk about him when we go into eclipses if you like.
No, mention him now. Go ahead. Now that you brought him up.
Well, I mean, the other thing with Taurus Scorpio is it's the money axis, financial axis. And as both of us have been talking about since the eclipses in Scorpio Taurus started in November 2021 and continue till October 2023, add the eclipses to Uranus, erratic, unpredictable. And we're in this time where the economy, the stock market, everything is wibbly wobbly. And it's quite scary, actually, I think, isn't it? What's happening out in the world on the financial level. But
really disastrous here. I mean, it's really, really serious. But as you said, we have been saying all year that these eclipses are about money.
Yeah.
about finances, and you will see it in the wider world.
Yeah.
Carry
Yeah.
on. You want to talk about Yvonne.
Just become a hero. November the 9th, 1938. So he's actually having his Uranus return, and he was born with the sun in Scorpio opposite Uranus in Taurus. So it's his Uranus return. It's that cycle. He's the founder of Patagonia, which is an outdoor company. And he's been an environmentalist, a philanthropist. He's always been into the well-being of workers. And he decided that he didn't want to sell the company or take it public. And he's been umming and ahhing what to do. And he's come up with this idea to set up kind of a trust fund. So all the profits of his company, which we're talking 3 billion, go towards helping climate change and go towards protecting undeveloped land across the globe. And I mean, for me, this is just, and also, you know, he talks about he wants to bring into life a new form of capitalism that stops this incredible divide between the rich and the poor. And I just thought, wow, this is a really good example of how this Scorpio Taurus axis and what's going on at the moment, you know, is there for people to step into and do something that's kind of good and powerful and ethical with it. Because the danger with Scorpio is that there's, you know, it's a sign that's often linked to corruption, the underworld, isn't it?
Well,
so,
yeah,
you know, he's just a hero to me for this.
Yeah, and he's a great example of what Uranus and Taurus can do, which is the period that we're in right now. Uranus and Taurus, we're in the 7-year stretch. He's having his return, so it hasn't been there for 82 years or whatever. And it's being, Uranus and Taurus is future oriented, and it's about practical ideas of how we can go into the next 82 years, you know, how we can do that, and not, in this case, not lose the planet, because this is the you know, the very earthy, this is a fixed earth sign, Taurus. So it's interesting also that, you know, Patagonia does outdoor gear, that he's talking about climate change, that this is practical ideas for the future. Yeah, no, I think he's fantastic, and actually inspiring. And actually that's the way that we are going to go. We have a very retrogressive government temporarily in this country. They're not going to last long. Who really interestingly, as a sort of fight back against that, they want to sort of reintroduce fracking, and they want to pave over the green belt. And I mean, I'm sure they won't last long because of this, because it's so unpopular. But it's interesting that there's this pushback against what the real future is, and the real future we know is renewable energy, and people like Mr. Patagonia, you know, that kind of future. That's the vision that we should be going towards, and we will be.
Yeah, so I mean, great. I mean, I think it's just so important to talk about the sort of positive side.
Yeah, I mean, I think these people just seem to be very out of date, the ones in charge at the moment.
Dinosaurs.
Yeah, they're dinosaurs. They need to go. They need to be put out of their misery. So shall we look at the eclipses? What do you want to do? Because we've got one coming up very soon on the 20th.
Yeah, I think let's start with the eclipses, because as soon as the sun moves into Scorpio, which is October the 23rd, and actually moves in with Venus, you know, the two move into Scorpio together, and those two, Sun and Venus, have been side by side in Libra. We talked about this last month, and they move into Scorpio together, and then stay together. And almost as soon as they move in, there's a solar eclipse, a new moon eclipse on October the 25th, with the moon, sun, and Venus side by side.
So I'm just putting this up for those of you who watch this on YouTube. This is it on the screen, 25th of October, 2022. And I think, I mean, it's a fascinating eclipse. I mean, it's not as strong as the one that's coming up in November. It's because it's not exact. It's a partial eclipse. But, you know, it's a conjunction of sun, moon, Venus, very, very tight in Scorpio. They're all at 2 degrees of Scorpio. And Venus is she doesn't like being in Scorpio. It's not her top place.
Yeah.
Venus is cash. She's about money.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that it's looking, I mean, and it's an eclipse it's a solar eclipse. I think that it's there. I think we have to wait and let the chips fall down. I wouldn't suggest doing anything on that eclipse to anybody particularly. But I think that there's going to be stuff around currency with this.
Mm.
And because it's near the south node, that's the node more of dissipation.
Yeah.
So it's actually for those of us living in Britain, it's pretty worrying times that we're living in because of the current turmoil, which affects people directly. This is not like, oh, market turmoil, whatever. People's mortgages are directly affected. People's pensions are directly affected. And one thing that is important to remember with astrology, that astrology teaches us, is that everything's a transit. Everything moves on. Nothing is stuck.
Yeah.
But this looks heavy duty to me. What do you think?
Well,
it's opposite Uranus again.
Sorry?
I was going to say, and the other part of this eclipse is that the nodal conjunction to Uranus, which is even more powerful.
Well, I mean, that stays, doesn't it? And that becomes particularly powerful, I think, at the lunar eclipse.
Yeah.
I mean, a Scorpio solar eclipse, we actually haven't, I think it's the only one in this cycle. I don't think there's another one. There is a shadowy theme to eclipses always. And I agree with you when you say that, it's you don't plan anything for an eclipse if you can help it, because the shadow falls during an eclipse and you have to wait and see what happens when, the light comes back in a way, when the shadow of the eclipse lifts. And to add to the shadowy theme, the ruler of this eclipse is Mars in Gemini, square Neptune. And that often has a theme of, confusion or something being hidden as well, Mars square Neptune, something sort of shadowy too. But having said that, I think...
Just go say one more thing about that Mars, and it's pretty much stationing.
It is stationing, yeah.
So that means it's about to turn retrograde in a few days' time from there. So it's a very intensely powerful Mars when it's stationing, and because it's because of all those planets in Scorpio, and it's the ruler of Scorpio, it's a really super powered Mars. So people like Geminis are really going to be feeling this.
Yeah, no, agreed. But the plus side of it, I do think there's a lot of power in a solar eclipse. I always talk about it being a new moon with oomph. So it's the type of, new beginnings can come out of this, and you may need to move fast, actually. I mean, it's kind of a weird, Mars is slowing down, but there may be something that you realize you've got to move. There's an ending that often comes with an eclipse beginning, something you have to let go of, close a door, open a door. But it's almost like there's quite often a tough decision to make. And I don't think it's a time to be stationary, actually. I don't know what you think about that, because that might be quite controversial to say that around this eclipse.
Really? No, I agree. I mean, I think you have to be on your toes. I definitely think this is more about letting go and things ending than about beginning anything. Especially, I would wait until after the next eclipse. I mean, we're well into eclipse season. To me, this is like, let go, throw the ballast over the side, get rid of stuff. I mean, this is we were talking about shit, right? And the association with Scorpio. This is a real, get rid of your shit eclipse. And that eclipse feeling carries over for plenty of weeks either side. This is the season to be rid of stuff, including, may I say, psychological stuff, hang-ups, got or addictions that you've got. It's actually quite good for that, for getting rid of those kind of burdens that you've been carrying for a long time, or the feelings that you have to, responsibilities that you've been carrying that you shouldn't be carrying. And I actually feel that you can, I wouldn't sort of maybe organize to do that on the eclipse, but I would, if you're feeling like you need to let something go or certain things go, do it. It's the bonfire.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about this. It's a bonfire. Throw the out. I mean, I think that we're going to be seeing, I don't think it's a huge leap to say that we're going to be seeing a lot of stuff in the outer world, in the mundane world, which around these eclipses.
I think
sorry, I was just going to say I'm interested in these hijabis in Iran.
Yeah.
It's the bonfire, the hijab there.
Yeah.
I hope that they stay safe.
Yeah, and Venus, the planet of women, in this eclipse as well.
Yeah. And Scorpio, Pluto is the kind of lord of the invisible, right? Of wearing the hijab, of hiding your face, of hiding yourself. And he's also ruler of Scorpio. So it's really interesting. And there's more to come with that.
And the planet linked to power, control, and oppression.
Yeah.
So you can see the clash, can't you, in this? Also, the other thing I'd say with eclipses, I think it's always good to know that they're coming, because, the way we've been talking about it is that we have some sense of control in what we can do during an eclipse. But also eclipses, I think, often coincide with external events, sometimes that we didn't see coming, or, it's other people's actions or what happens outside us. That means, we have to respond, we have to react to events. So that's often, eclipses, I think, are often the things we didn't see coming. In Scorpio, perhaps especially so. So wherever it falls, it's just keeping an eye on it where it falls to see if you can, maybe preempt what's coming or what may be happening. If you've got any kind of things that you're unsure about. For both, I was going to say for Cancer and Taurus, this is very much about relationships. So, it's kind of thinking about the people in your life and how you kind of sort of preempt this eclipse activity.
Yes, or attempt to. This eclipse, we've already said this, but I want to say it again, is that eclipses come out of left field, but this one and the next one, especially because of their connection to Uranus, right? So these are shocking, there's surprises involved. So if you have, if you're a Uranian person, and this applies to anybody, for example, if you have a Moon Uranus conjunction, this is an eclipse for you. You may be shocking people, or you may there may be a shock coming to you. And I think that you're right about, I think for Scorpios, it's also about relationships, actually.
With Venus there, and self-transformation, actually. I think it's about, self-transformation when it falls in your star sign. Maybe how you come across to others. I think for Scorpio and Aquarius, actually, interestingly, this could be about profile or power in some way. For Aquarius, you were talking about, Uranus, which rules Aquarius, and it's Aquarius's career sector. For Scorpio, it's sort of your personal profile, but it might be about needing to kind of step up and take on a position of power during this eclipse season, particularly this solar eclipse.
Yeah, and Leo's, it's obviously about the family, or the home.
Yeah.
You might be moving, actually.
You might be moving or knocking down walls and creating something new. It's kind of, that theme, Scorpio theme of destroying something to build something new again. That could be kind of there for Leo as well.
It's interesting. It's, I think it's quite exciting, actually, when we get into this eclipse season and everything accelerates, the change accelerates.
Yeah.
And because of that Uranian content, the change accelerates and we don't know which way it's going to go.
Yeah, we'll be reporting back next month. This eclipse is very close to my birthday as well, so
Yeah.
see. Exciting and scary. I mean, that's that's Scorpio season, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But more so. I mean, and anybody who has the nodes also in in this axis. So if you're born in like 2003, 4, or mid 60s, you're going to have this applies to you more.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
I know these nodal stuff can be really good because it moves your life along. You're not stuck. Things happen. Eclipses can be really exciting because they allow energy to come through. You're not, and I think one of the reasons they're so important in these fixed is because these signs are fixed. And it gives it, because they tend to get more stuck, Scorpio and Taurus. So these eclipses are
Yeah.
really shaking things to their foundations.
Yeah, although I would say that for both those signs, with having had Uranus in Taurus, I mean, there's, my life, there's been so much change going on with Uranus. It's kind of like we're getting used to change. We're getting used to the new.
Yeah, you've been forced into it, haven't you?
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
will change, and you'll change again.
Embrace change. Come on.
And speaking of change, we should talk about, I'm going to stop the share for a while.
Yes.
And we should talk about Mars going retrograde and Jupiter back into Pisces, which are both happening at the end of October. I mean, this is sort of major stuff happening. Mars is still in Gemini, but it's interesting that Mars goes retrograde while it's in Gemini, and Mercury is in Scorpio. So they're actually in mutual reception.
They are.
For the next couple of weeks. And I think that's quite useful. As obviously it's quite useful because they're supporting each other. And it's useful for various things, but I think particularly for research.
Yeah.
Stuff out, digging underneath, because now Mars is retrograde, it's internal, it's going inward, but it's in this sign of curiosity, which is Gemini. So wherever that falls in your chart, it's important. I mean, if you're a Gemini, this is a really, really important time. And it may be curiosity about yourself and your motivations if you're a Gemini. Certainly not again, it's interesting. It's not a good time to be like pushing ahead because it'll be frustrating. Especially for Scorpios who are ruled by Mars, or Aries who are ruled by Mars. You can't necessarily push ahead. But if you go with the internal process, you're getting this help from Mercury and Scorpio. These two planets are working together to dig deeper.
Go on.
And it's quite an intellectual or intelligent combination of planets, I think. When Mars, people think of Mars as kind of brutal, dumb soldier. That's how he's personified sometimes, and he's not like that. He's a smart soldier when he's working with his Scorpio side, right?
Yeah, and he can be a hero as well.
And he's a hero
archetype, Mars.
But the hero's journey is now an internal journey, not an external one.
Yes, and I think it's interesting that you're pointing out, I mean, when Mercury and Mars are working together, and when planets are in mutual reception, i.e. in each other's star signs, they're working together. Mars and Mercury together, you can walk your talk as well. That's kind of the symbolism of it. And I agree that, again, Gemini, Scorpio, it's that soulmate connection. It's kind of the hidden. It's a quintus. It's across the zodiac. But Gemini and Scorpio have so much in common. They're both, I have, as a Scorpio, I have so many Gemini friends, and there's real curiosity for both. Sometimes Gemini on a more, multifaceted way, for Scorpio more kind of esoteric or intense. But they're both star signs that are really, love finding things out, a real sense of discovery. And I agree with Mars being retrograde. I mean, it turns retrograde on the 30th and will be on go slow until January the 12th, 2023. This would be a great time to do some creative writing, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it really would. Also, too, especially for, the Geminis amongst us, the Virgos, the
Aries as well,
Aries,
third house.
and
Third house of study. So yeah.
Aries particular. The other thing about Mars, and the difference between the curiosity and the research that you get between Scorpio and Gemini is that Scorpio is really, really able to focus, and often only has like three things they're interested in life, whatever those are, those three things, they really, really do it. Whereas
Yeah.
Gemini tends to have like 50,000 things that they're interested in. But what happens with this mutual reception is that suddenly Gemini is going to be able to focus wherever that Gemini is. And it gets that help from the Mercury and all those planets in Scorpio initially, right? In this month of October, November. So that's the time to take that focus, especially, as you say, for Aries, Gemini, actually possibly Libra also, to take that and really focus. Yeah, definitely Libra, especially if you're doing like some kind of university courses or some travel research, whatever. But also I like it, I like it for Scorpio in particular because it's in this 8th house, which is definitely the house of the esoteric and the psychological. And you're able to, I think, with this Mars retrograde, to go in there and turn something around. Some problem, some issue that you may have had, you can turn around or dig up some gold.
Yeah, it is. I often think of Mars retrograde, well, particularly in Gemini, it's a time to rework your ideas. It's a time, if you think of the sort of, I often think of it with Mars retrograde as when it's direct, the arm is moving forward. And then when it's retrograde, you go back, you hide away, you rework your strategy, decide what you're going to do next, ready to kind of move into action again when it turns direct.
And for Sagittarius, this is going to be super important as well. This is about relationship, right? So someone in your life may be coming back, this Marsy person, or you may be rethinking your relationships.
Yeah.
And one of the issues for Sag is often they overthink their relationships. And it's funny, it's such a spontaneous, fun sign, but when it comes to relationship, they can sort of think too much. But at this point, it is the time to overthink your relationships and rework them.
Yeah.
So it's actually really important for Sagittarius because it's in your opposite sign. And furthermore, next month, you're going to have all those planets that are now in Scorpio are going to be moving into Sagittarius, opposite that Mars.
Yeah, and really powerful for Virgo too, because Mars in Gemini is your career vocational sector. Yeah. So this could be, I think these last 2 months of the year are perhaps a time to take your foot off the brake, take a step back and really start looking at what you want from 2023. It might be time to kind of rethink where you're heading and why. When Mars is retrograde, it's not a time to go full throttle ahead. It's a different energy. And also I want to add, because, being a Scorpio with Aries rising, Mars, I often find these Mars retrograde phases really difficult because somewhere in life I'm not in control. I've been in situations where someone's telling me to do something that I don't want to do. And my tendency is to want to fight back against that. But actually, when Mars is retrograde, sometimes it's best just to sort of retreat a bit, rethink, rework, again, all that sense of working things out before moving forward. So, it can be, it is sometimes a time with Mars retrograde to think, who has the power actually, who has the control as well? And it may not be you, it may be someone else. And that means it's time to think about what you're going to do next.
And it's interesting, I mean, for Pisces also, this is going to be in quite on a critical angle of your chart, your home life or your family. And there's going to be some retrenching and rethinking there. And at the same time, Jupiter goes into Pisces. And it's going to be not directly squaring that Mars, but pretty much square to the Mars. Almost the same day, isn't it? That they both, that Jupiter goes back into Pisces and Mars turns retrograde. So there's a kind of tense dynamic there between possibly the demands of your home life and your personal growth, which is really what's happening again for Pisces. And people should cast their minds back to the beginning of this year between December and May. So December 2021 and May 2022, when Jupiter was in Pisces before. And now we're going to get a little bit of a bite of that cherry, one last, not a bite of the cherry. It's like the last sort of sucking on the cherry pip that last time for the next 6 weeks up until Christmas, just before Christmas, with Jupiter back in Pisces. And wait, that's more than 6 weeks, isn't it? Anyway, Jupiter back in Pisces until the 20th of December. And it's given a kind of kick by that square, I think, from Mars, because also one thing you need to keep in mind with these retrogrades is that as a planet stations, it intensifies for a while. It's like it grinds down into that one set of degrees, which is around 25 degrees, because it's going to, Mars sticks around there for a couple of weeks, I think. So it's grinding down into that 25 degrees of Gemini. If you have any planets there at all, they're going to be feeling this Mars energy. Part of which is this, I want to go forward, but I need to go dig deeper. I need to think harder. I need to focus on what that part of my chart actually means. And at the same time, it's getting this square from Jupiter. It's a really interesting combination of energies.
And just to say, Jupiter was also in Pisces from May to July 2021. It's been quite a weird Jupiter transit for Pisces, hasn't it? Because it's sort of been in these, oh, here comes a wave, and oh, here's another big wave earlier this year. Oh, and here's a final whoosh. For me, what's interesting about this, I do think there's something about needing to take the foot off the brake in the last 2 months, because, Jupiter's moving out of Aries, which is trailblazing, forward moving again, into Pisces, which is more about surrender and about, checking in with your emotional self, when Mars is retrograde. So there really is, I think it's going to be quite hard to move things forward towards the end of the year, and if anything, line things up ready to start next year instead. There really is a sense of what's going to be most valuable now is taking time out to kind of reflect, shut the door a bit on the outside world, maybe at times, if you can, and probably we all need to, but, just to see what you want to let go of, what needs to be resolved, and turn inwards. It feels like a time that's really important to turn inwards. So, for some of the star signs, meditation, Aries and Cancer in particular, meditation could really help.
And also there's going to be that Mercury retrograde also at the end of the year. So, it's a very interesting time. And I do completely agree that this is not a time to be plowing ahead unless you're writing your incredible fantasy novel.
Yes.
Virgo.
Great.
Could you please, Virgo, with your writing partner, write your fantasy novel?
And also Aries, Capricorn, it's in your study sector. So yeah, I mean, if these signs fall in kind of sectors of your chart that are about study or creativity, then launch yourself into a creative project. I mean, make that your focus.
It's really, really intense. It's actually great. I mean, also, I think that it's interesting for Aquarians, this Mars retrograde, because it's in that sector that's to do with, fun and leisure and pleasure. And it's like, actually, you could teach yourself chess or something, at this point, or teach yourself to become really good at a particular skill.
Yeah.
You can intensely repeat. So actually really getting good at a language. I'm doing Duolingo at the moment.
Oh, you're learning a language, aren't you? Great.
I'm practicing my Arabic, which isn't very good, but because I'm going to Egypt at the end of the year. So I'm trying to brush up on Arabic.
Excellent. And Mars retrograde in Gemini, that, you know, it's an excellent time for brushing up languages or going back to play the piano. It's, you know, the hands, Gemini. It's kind of this great time for picking something up. You know, and for all the star signs that might apply in a way, just because it is in Gemini, which is about languages.
I think that applies to everybody. I mean, obviously it applies a lot to Aries, but everybody, you know,
Yeah.
Gemini themselves, you know,
Yeah.
as you say, pick up the tenor horn that you put down 8 years ago and give it a toot.
Yeah. Yeah. And the more we focus on creativity and beauty in the world, you know, that's where we need to turn our attention away from the car crash happening over the other side.
Yeah. Well, I mean, also we're all trying to keep warm, right?
Yeah, and that.
Um,
Find a buddy to snuggle up with.
okay, I'll do that. So do we want to talk about this next eclipse?
Yes, we do, Christina. I think we need to launch into the lunar eclipse, which happens on November the 8th, and it falls at 16 degrees Taurus. And it's a really punchy lunar eclipse.
Yeah, there's no getting away from the puncharama because, hello, here, I've just put it up on the screen for those of you watching. And basically, it's an exact conjunction between the moon and Uranus. I mean, it's incredible. It's like fireworks, isn't it? That lunar eclipse. Anybody who has anything at 16 degrees of Taurus or Scorpio, boom, you know, one thing I would advise with this is be somewhere where you feel safe, because, and I mean safe emotionally.
Okay.
Because you don't want there's going to be, especially the Taurus and the Scorpio, because you don't want to be somewhere where there's a kind of vulnerability about this, because it's so wild, you know, and it's a full moon, so it's so emotional. I think a mega full moon.
Yeah.
Total eclipse. That there's kind of wildness about this, that you don't want to be somewhere where being wild could get you into any kind of trouble. It also makes this perfect square to Saturn. I mean, this is like, don't mess with authority at this point as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, you know, this, because also what's interesting at this eclipse is that Venus, the Sun, and Mercury are all sitting together in Scorpio. You know, and that combination feels, I mean, quite social, actually. Mercury and Venus are both linked to people in our lives. And for me, this eclipse is like, where am I going to be left out? With, you know, who's not going to invite me to something? I mean, this, with that, you know, Uranus, often you're the outsider. You're the one who's, you know, you're not been invited to the party. So there could be themes of that going on, particularly for Scorpio, maybe, or, you know,
or Taurus, actually.
Taurus, or Cancer, maybe, or Capricorn, because there's a indication of parties and socializing there. But yeah, it could be something like you realize you're not in the in group. You know, there's a big party going on and I got missed off the list. Really?
Yeah. Are you in with the in crowd? Yeah, I can see that, particularly with Cancer, actually.
Yeah.
Although I think that for certain other signs like Sagittarius, you are in with the in crowd, Sag. You know, but I would say be mind your own emotional state, particularly Taurus. And actually thinking about that, particularly Aquarius, you know, you want to be somewhere safe and nice and cozy. All the fixed signs, to my mind, you want to be with people who you trust.
Yeah. And it's also, this eclipse is not a good time to, you know, overreact or,
oh God, yeah,
start, you know, get upset about something majorly, because it just feels like that would not be the good thing to do. That could really descend into chaos. So if you've got anything in your life that's a real, you know, clash or conflict, I mean, again, use the eclipse law, which is wait a couple of days for things to settle.
It will spiral. It could spiral. Things can spiral out of control with this, and people will say things that they don't want to say. That's what it looks like to me. And you may have a clash with an authority, especially again, Taurus, like your dad, that kind of authority, or your company, or your university, your teacher, something like that. So you need to pay attention, use the eclipse by paying attention to it and realizing that this is a very tricky eclipse. It's fraught with instability is how I seeing it's unstable. And things will go off in different directions. I'm seeing like fireworks that go off in the wrong direction, when you have your Catherine wheel that suddenly, burns the hedge down. It's like that.
It's interesting you've mentioned that twice, fireworks, and those Sun, Venus, Mercury. November, in fact, the first opposition to Uranus is on November the 5th, which is bonfire night, when Venus opposes Uranus. And then those three planets all oppose Uranus and square Saturn between November the 5th and November the 11th. So you'll feel this eclipse outside the actual date of November the 8th. And the other thing that I suddenly thought when you were saying fireworks, there's a lot of councils are not putting on their big firework displays this year because they can't afford it. Isn't that interesting as well? That's also showing up in this eclipse. It's the money is tight. There's the square to Saturn. The money is tight. So we have to, some of the things, that used to sort of be more standard can't happen.
Yeah. That's also something, as again, it's a shock, but we're already in the eclipse season. So the shocks that we're seeing to the financial system are connected with these eclipses. The ones that we're seeing now currently are connected, and they're not going to sort of stop until after these eclipses. So there's more to come, there's more shocks to come. Let's just hope it's a good shock rather than a bad one. But I want to say brace yourselves, and make yourself secure in whatever way seems necessary. In the wider world, this is definitely to do with money.
And for if we're looking at these eclipses, Aries and Libra, it is your financial axis, the Taurus Scorpio axis. So for those two signs in particular, but I think for everyone in preparation for this eclipse season, make sure your money is safe and secure. Don't just be blind about what's happening. Really kind of consider what you might need to do to shore things up, because we're in, and also this eclipse season isn't, it's going to continue into 2023. These are changing times on the financial realm, the financial world.
It's interesting that the UK, it's interesting the UK has Libra rising. So this is dead in the financial sector of the British chart. These eclipses. But straight in there. And you need to know that. You do
know that, and I just want to say that's the thing with Uranus. There will be winners and losers. Uranus, rides and the same with eclipses. It's that you ride the sort of highs and lows of life. So there will be winners and there will be losers. It's not to say that everyone's going to lose, but it is a time to kind of shore things up.
And I'm interested in the square to Saturn with this because it's so tight. It's a very close square to Saturn. It's not, random. And Saturn turns direct actually on the 23rd of October, doesn't it?
Just before the sun moves into Scorpio, but it's on the same day.
And just before the first eclipse of this pair. And Saturn is now moving out of Aquarius, right? Saturn is associated with rules and regulations and government. And so those rules and regulations and government may get a shock from the eclipses. Because the eclipses, actually what's interesting about this is that Saturn is in its own sign, so it's very powerful, right? And we've seen it, so, you know, we've always associated with these rules around COVID, and those restrictions have been very strong with the Saturn in Aquarius. But it is connected also to the Uranus in Taurus, which is also rules Aquarius. And those two are suddenly, you know, they've been in this very tight square that we've discussed a lot.
Yeah.
And this tight square is now pinged by this particular eclipse. And there may be also, as well as all this financial stuff that we've been talking about, there may be something around COVID too.
Yeah.
It seems to me.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting about this eclipse, it's important because now Saturn's direct is going to move out of Aquarius. It will move out next March, so it won't be in its sign of rulership where it's been since 2020 or before.
Yeah, December 2020, I think.
No, it must have been before that because it made that was when it was in Aquarius. Okay, it's been in its sign of rulership for about 4 years or so then. But it's now, this eclipse marks the point where Saturn and Uranus are finally going to move apart, and they're not going to come back into square aspect. They were so powerful in 2021. So it may be that something is coming to an end also around this eclipse. I mean,
it's like it's busting out.
Yeah, you could look at it that way, where whatever's been, you know, holding in, where you've been stuck in this between a rock and a hard place, there is some kind of ending that means you can move on. I mean, that's another way this eclipse could play out.
Yeah, well, no, I definitely feel that it's a breakout. You know, because I you know, what I was wondering with looking at this eclipse is what's stronger, the Saturn or the eclipse? And of course, the eclipse is just a transit, right? It's a quicker transit. Saturn is in there, but Saturn's leaving Aquarius. It's like, I'm getting out of here, man. Now I'm taking off the seatbelt, I'm throwing off my shackles, I'm moving on. And that's what this feels like to me. And it feels like the eclipse may accelerate that somehow.
Yeah, and Saturn does leave Aquarius before the next set of eclipses, actually. So
yeah,
Saturn's making a run for it.
Yeah, that's what I feel. He's like, I've done enough. I showed you.
Yeah.
And if you haven't got the message yet, well, I may kind of reinforce it one more time before I leave.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about the first lockdown, which was under Saturn and Aquarius, wasn't it? And how yes, it was because the air, you know, the plane stopped flying, which was very Saturn and Aquarius, because Aquarius is an air sign and it's to do with engineering, so it's connected with airplanes. And the airplanes were grounded and the cars stopped in the first lockdown, and nature came back very quickly in certain places. And it's really important that we do not forget that. We do not forget what happened. And already the media cycle, the blah, 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 is like trying to move us on from remembering, actually, there was something amazing that happened in that first lockdown.
Yeah.
Which was the surgence of nature when we just stopped.
Yeah.
Curious to see what happens as Saturn leaves Aquarius, whether we get a reminder of that in some way, because actually that was a really important message that we got from the universe.
Yeah, it was, you know, it was like, you need to do things differently.
Yeah. It's like,
try this.
Yeah, try this. Try it. You know, remember how God rested on the seventh day? It was a really good idea.
Yeah. And again, with this axis, I mean, as we talked about at the beginning, really, it is the axis of fertility, fecundity, growth, production, isn't it? The earth, nature, and that important cycle of life, death, and renewal. So yeah, big lessons probably in these eclipses, actually. And that might be something to look at during, you know, this eclipse season. Again, what can you do individually to make a difference? What do you want to let go of? What do you want to stop doing as well? You know,
I mean, I'm also, one of the things that happened in that first lockdown was, it was like homeostasis, wasn't it? As you allow other things to come. you know, and stop interfering and allow nature to come back just by stopping. That's all you have to do sometimes. Instead of this frenetic doing thing that we have. And with Mars retrograde as well, and Jupiter still retrograde in Pisces, this is maybe another time to stop that doing.
Being more. Can we move the chart off? Well done.
Hello.
Did it?
Yeah, I was thinking I'm bored with looking at that chart. I want to look at Sally. Is there any last, I would kind of, I mean, I feel that we've looked at, I mean, these are the major things this month. Is there any, and we've talked quite a long time, so I think that we need to wind up.
Yes, I agree. And I kind of feel like that was a lovely way to end, bringing it back to that, you know, and a reminder of what we can do individually, and taking responsibility, actually. It's going to be an interesting couple of months towards the end of this year. Go inwards, be creative, seek beauty in the world. That's always my advice.
And if you're anything like me, I was also thinking that Saturn in Aquarius is like quite chilly. And a lot of us are going to be having our heating off in this country because of the craziness that's going on.
Yeah, I know. So, you know,
stay warm.
Stay warm. Absolutely. Stay warm. And we'll talk to you in Sagittarius season next. Yes, hoping to bring some fire.
Exactly. I was hoping that brings the warmth. Meanwhile, stay warm, stay safe, and watch out for fireworks.
Absolutely. All right. Take care.
Bye.